Introduction: a new way of seeing the world. Imagine, for a moment, that you are standing before a large window, gazing out at the world beyond. The glass is clear, yet it is never perfectly neutral. Subtly, it tints everything you see. Some windows color the world with warmth, making the view appear more inviting and hopeful, while others may cast a shadow that makes everything seem harsher, colder, and more difficult than it really is. This window, through which you perceive life, represents your paradigm, your map of reality, your interpretation of how the world works and how you fit into it. Stephen R. Covey begins The 7 Habits of Highly Effective People by telling us that the way we see the problem is often the problem itself. It is not always the circumstances around us that limit our effectiveness, but rather the lens through which we interpret those circumstances. This book is not merely a manual for productivity tips, nor is it a shallow collection of motivational slogans that shine brightly for a day and then fade away. Instead, it is a journey into principles, deep, timeless truths about human effectiveness that apply across cultures, eras, and individual circumstances. Covey insists that if we want to truly change our lives, if we want to be effective in the fullest sense of the word, we must first change from the inside out. To move from quick fixes to lasting transformation, we must re-examine the very paradigms guiding our thoughts, decisions, and behaviors. Let's take a step back and reflect. How often do we try to solve life's difficulties with surface-level solutions? A strained relationship, for instance, is rarely healed with a polite apology alone if trust has been broken. The root lies deeper in character, integrity, and empathy. A failing business is not turned around by cosmetic rebranding if the foundation lacks clear vision, discipline, and value creation. Our lives, just like these examples, are built not on techniques alone, but on principles. And that is the heartbeat of Covey's message. True effectiveness flows from alignment with universal principles of character, responsibility, and growth. Covey calls this a paradigm shift, a fundamental change in how we see the world and ourselves. He illustrates with powerful anecdotes, such as the story of a father sitting on a subway with his restless children. The passengers grow increasingly annoyed as the children misbehave, while the father seems indifferent. Finally, one person confronts him, only to hear that the children's mother had just passed away at the hospital, and the father, lost in grief, had little strength to control them. In a moment, irritation dissolves into compassion. What changed? The children's behavior remained the same. The subway was still crowded, but the lens through which the observer saw the situation transformed. This is the essence of a paradigm shift, and it is the foundation upon which all 7 habits rest. Covey distinguishes between 2 ways of living: the personality ethic and the character ethic. The personality ethic is what modern culture often celebrates: charm, techniques, image, and social skills. These are not inherently wrong, but when they are mistaken for substance, they fail us. Imagine trying to build a house on sand. No matter how beautifully you decorate it, it will not stand. The character ethic, in contrast, is the rock-solid foundation of integrity, humility, courage, fairness, and responsibility. It is slower to develop, less flashy, but enduring. True effectiveness cannot be faked, and it cannot be reduced to clever tricks. It is cultivated through character. As listeners, we are invited not simply to consume these ideas passively, but to examine our own paradigms. Consider your personal challenges. Perhaps you want to be a better parent, a more trusted leader, a more disciplined student, or a more compassionate friend. Ask yourself, do you approach these challenges with quick techniques, persuasive phrases, time management hacks, motivational pep talks, or do you anchor them in deeper principles such as honesty, respect, discipline, and service? Covey encourages us to reflect deeply, for the answers shape the quality of our lives. The structure of this journey is simple but profound. The 7 habits are not isolated tricks, but interconnected stages of growth. The first 3 habits move us from dependence to independence. They're about mastering ourselves, taking responsibility, and becoming proactive creators of our lives rather than victims of circumstance. Once we achieve independence, the next 3 habits elevate us into interdependence. the recognition that true success and joy lie not in isolated achievement, but in cooperative relationships, teamwork, and synergy. Finally, the seventh habit is about renewal, sharpening the saw, ensuring that we remain balanced and capable of sustaining effectiveness over a lifetime. Together, these habits form a complete framework for growth, personal, professional, and relational. Before we step into habit one, let us pause and acknowledge the promise of this path. It is not easy, nor is it instant. These habits require reflection, practice, and at times, uncomfortable honesty with ourselves. Yet, the reward is extraordinary: a life of greater clarity, stronger character, deeper relationships, and a sense of contribution that transcends personal success. Covey invites us not to simply become efficient machines, but to live with purpose, principle, and peace. As we prepare to enter the first habit, be proactive. Imagine that you are holding a compass rather than a clock. The clock measures how fast you are moving, but the compass tells you where you are headed. Many of us rush through life, checking the clock constantly, measuring progress in minutes, hours, and deadlines. But if the compass is not set toward true north, we may reach our destination quickly only to realize it is not where we wanted to be. The 7 habits are about aligning your compass, ensuring that your speed matches your direction, and that your life's journey is anchored in principles that endure beyond circumstances. This is the invitation of the 7 habits of highly effective people, to step into a new way of seeing, a new way of living, and a new way of contributing. As you listen, let the stories, principles, and reflections not just inform your mind, but challenge your paradigms and inspire your heart. For effectiveness is not about doing more, but about becoming more. And so, with this understanding, let us begin the journey. Let us explore the first habit, the foundation upon which all others rest, the habit of choosing responsibility, of becoming the author of our own lives, of refusing to be a victim of circumstance. Let us step boldly into habit 1, be proactive. Chapter 1, be proactive. Imagine you are standing in the middle of a storm. The winds howl, the rain beats down, and the thunder rumbles in the distance. Many of us, in such moments of life, feel powerless, like leaves tossed about by forces we cannot control. We sigh and say, "That's just the way things are," or "There's nothing I can do." Yet Stephen Covey tells us that the first step toward true effectiveness begins with a startling declaration. We are not victims of circumstance. We are creators of response. This is the essence of the first habit, be proactive. To be proactive means far more than simply taking initiative. It is the recognition that between what happens to us and how we respond, there lies a gap, and within that gap resides our freedom. We may not control the weather, the economy, the decisions of others, or the turns of fate, but we always retain the ability to choose our attitude, our words, our actions. Proactivity is about owning that freedom, about standing firm in the storm and saying, "Though I cannot command the winds, I can adjust my sails." Covey contrasts 2 types of people, reactive and proactive. Reactive people are like mirrors. They reflect the environment around them. If the weather is pleasant, they are cheerful. If the weather is foul, they are sour. Their mood, energy, and actions rise and fall with the shifting circumstances. Proactive people, on the other hand, are like compasses. They maintain direction regardless of external conditions. They carry within themselves a set of values, principles, and commitments that guide their responses. While reactive people say, "I can't help it, that's just the way I am," proactive people declare, "I choose to act based on values, not moods." Let us pause here and reflect on our own tendencies. How often do we say, "If only my boss appreciated me more, I'd work harder," or "If only my family supported me, I'd pursue my dreams," or "If only the economy were better, I'd succeed"? These are the voices of reactivity, the language of powerlessness. Covey challenges us to shift that language into ownership. I will work with excellence regardless of recognition. I will pursue my goals with or without applause. I will adapt and find opportunities even in hardship. It is a radical transformation, from living life as an effect of circumstances to living as a cause within them. Covey introduces a simple yet profound model to help us understand this: the circle of concern and the circle of influence. Picture two concentric circles. The larger outer circle is filled with all the things we care about but cannot directly control: the weather, political decisions, the stock market, even the choices of our loved ones. Inside it lies the smaller circle of influence, the things we can directly affect: our habits, our decisions, our words, our attitudes. Reactive people focus their energy on the circle of concern, worrying about things beyond their control. They complain, blame, and drain themselves with frustration. Proactive people, by contrast, invest their energy in the circle of influence. They ask, what can I do right now with what I have to make a difference? And as they consistently focus on this circle, something remarkable happens. It expands. Their influence grows, their impact deepens, and life becomes a story of empowerment rather than helplessness. Consider a real-world example. Imagine an employee stuck in a company with poor leadership. The reactive response might be constant complaining, gossiping, or disengagement, waiting for someone else to fix the situation. The proactive response might be to strengthen one's own skills, to serve customers with excellence, to build trust with colleagues, and to seek out opportunities within or beyond the organization. Over time, the proactive employee often rises to new responsibilities or finds doors opening elsewhere, while the reactive employee remains stuck in bitterness. The environment is the same, but the outcomes diverge dramatically because of the chosen response. Covey reminds us of Viktor Frankl, a psychiatrist and Holocaust survivor, whose story embodies proactivity at its deepest level. Stripped of his freedom, possessions, and even family in the concentration camps, Frankl realized that while guards could control his body, they could not control his inner freedom, the freedom to choose his attitude. Surrounded by suffering, he discovered meaning in service, compassion, and dignity. His famous words echo the heart of Habit 1. Everything can be taken from a man, but one thing, the last of the human freedoms, to choose one's attitude in any given set of circumstances. If Frankl could choose in such dire conditions, what excuse do we have in our daily inconveniences? Language plays a powerful role in shaping whether we live reactively or proactively. Reactive people say, I can't, I have to, or that's just the way I am. Their words betray a mindset of victimhood. Proactive people, however, say, I choose, I prefer, or I will. Their language reflects ownership. Listen to yourself for a day. Are your words the language of control or of surrender? By changing your language, you begin to reclaim your power. But being proactive is not about denial of reality. It does not mean pretending problems do not exist or forcing a smile in every hardship. It means acknowledging reality fully, both the challenges and your capacity to respond with integrity and creativity. A proactive person facing a financial crisis does not say, there is no problem. Instead, they say, here's the problem, here is what I can control, and here is what I will do. They act rather than react. Think of proactivity as planting seeds. Each small choice to take responsibility rather than shift blame is a seed planted in the soil of character. Over time, those seeds grow into trust, credibility, and influence. People around you begin to notice. Here is someone reliable, someone steady, someone who does not collapse under pressure or shift blame when things go wrong. Such character becomes magnetic. It draws opportunities and relationships, and it builds the foundation for the other 6 habits. As you reflect, ask yourself, what lies inside your circle of influence that you have been neglecting? Perhaps it is your health, where you keep postponing exercise, blaming busyness. Perhaps it is a relationship, where you wait for the other person to apologize first instead of reaching out with forgiveness. Perhaps it is your own growth, where you delay learning new skills because you resent external circumstances. Covey's challenge is clear. Stop waiting for the world to change before you do. Take ownership. Begin where you are. To live proactively is also to accept the principle of responsibility. The very word responsibility contains a hidden truth, the ability to respond. It is not merely about obligations, but about recognizing that every moment grants us power, the power to respond in alignment with our values. When someone insults you, you can respond with anger, silence, humor, or compassion. When plans collapse, you can choose despair or creativity. Responsibility is the daily exercise of freedom. Chapter 2. Begin with the end in mind. Close your eyes for a moment and imagine you are attending a funeral. The air is filled with a quiet reverence. People gather in somber reflection, and a hush falls over the room as loved ones prepare to speak. You look closer and realize this is no ordinary funeral. It is yours. You hear the voices of family, friends, colleagues, and members of your community stepping forward to share their memories. What do you hope they will say? Will they speak of your kindness, your integrity, your dedication, your love? Will they recall the difference you made in their lives, the character you embodied, the legacy you left behind? Or will their words reveal that you spent years chasing things that now seem hollow, achievements that glittered for a moment, but left no lasting mark? Stephen Covey begins Habit 2 with this striking image because it jolts us out of the daily rush of tasks and obligations, forcing us to confront a deeper question. What is my life really about? Habit 1 teaches us that we are the authors of our lives. Habit 2 now asks, if you hold a pen, what story do you want to write? To begin with the end in mind means to live each day with a clear understanding of your ultimate destination. It is not about predicting the future with precision, but about anchoring your choices in the vision of the person you want to become and the legacy you want to leave. Too often, we live reactively, letting the urgencies of the moment push us along. We wake up, rush to work, check emails, respond to crises, and collapse in a bed, only to repeat the cycle tomorrow. We may be efficient, but efficiency is not the same as effectiveness. As Covey reminds us, management is about climbing the ladder of success quickly and carefully. Leadership is about making sure the ladder is leaning against the right wall. Without clarity of vision, we may work tirelessly only to discover we climbed the wrong ladder. To illustrate, imagine two pilots. One is highly skilled, adjusting knobs and controls with flawless precision, keeping the aircraft running smoothly. But if he flies in the wrong direction, no amount of technical skill will bring the passengers to their intended destination. The second pilot, though less efficient in minor details, knows the correct heading and ensures the journey aligns with its true goal. Efficiency is valuable, but without vision, it may simply get you lost faster. Habit 2 insists that we must always begin with vision, with the end clearly in mind. But what does this mean in practice? Covey encourages us to define our personal mission statement, a document that articulates our deepest values, guiding principles, and vision for the life we want to live. Just as great organizations craft mission statements to provide direction and unity, individuals too need a compass that points toward true north. This mission statement becomes the foundation for decisions, large and small. When faced with dilemmas, you no longer ask, what's easiest in the moment, but rather, what aligns with who I am and who I aspire to be. Consider, for instance, the story of a young professional torn between advancing in his career and spending time with his family. Without a clear mission, he may chase promotions relentlessly, justifying neglect of loved ones as temporary sacrifices. Years later, he may succeed professionally, but find himself estranged at home. With a mission statement that places family as a central value, however, he approaches opportunities differently. He still pursues excellence, but not at the cost of the relationships he holds most dear. His decisions reflect balance, guided by vision rather than impulse. To create such a mission statement, Covey suggests beginning with principles, not with fads or external pressures. Principles are timeless truths: honesty, respect, service, growth, that remain steady regardless of trends. If you anchor your mission in fleeting desires, wealth, status, or approval, you may achieve them only to find emptiness. But when your mission is rooted in principles, you build on a foundation that endures storms and sustains meaning. Imagine a compass again. Trends may shift like winds, but principles remain a steady North Star. Covey also introduces the idea of center. Each of us organizes our life around something: work, spouse, money, pleasure, friends, possessions, or even ourselves. While these centers may provide comfort, none are stable enough to guide us fully. If your center is work, what happens when you lose your job? If it is relationships, what happens when people disappoint you? If it is pleasure, what happens when the thrill fades? Only a principle-centered life offers resilience, because principles do not change with circumstance. They remain true whether you are celebrated or criticized, rich or poor, strong or weak. Think of a storm at sea. A ship anchored to drifting debris will be pulled aimlessly, tossed by waves. But a ship anchored to the seabed, grounded in something immovable, holds steady. Principles are that anchor. A personal mission statement, crafted around them, ensures that no matter how the tides shift, your course remains true. Covey encourages us to visualize our roles in life: parent, spouse, professional, friend, community member, and to articulate what kind of person we want to be in each. For example, as a parent, you may envision being a source of unconditional love, guidance, and encouragement. As a professional, you may aim to contribute value, demonstrate integrity, and mentor others. As a friend, you may commit to loyalty and honesty. Writing these visions clarifies priorities and prevents one role from consuming all others. It ensures balance, for effectiveness is not about excelling in one area while neglecting the rest, but about harmony across all. Here is an analogy. Imagine your life as a wheel with spokes. Each spoke represents a role: family, career, health, spirituality, community. If one spoke grows long while the others remain short, the wheel wobbles and cannot roll smoothly. Balance across all spokes is essential. Beginning with the end in mind helps you shape each spoke intentionally, ensuring the wheel of life turns steadily forward. This habit also calls us to step back from the noise of daily living and ask profound questions. What will matter when the years have passed? Which achievements will endure? Which memories will bring peace? Which regrets will sting most sharply? Many people, near the end of life, rarely wish they had worked longer hours or accumulated more possessions. More often, they wish they had invested deeper in relationships, grown truer to themselves, and contributed meaningfully. By beginning with the end in mind now, we avoid those regrets later. Let us bring this home with a practical reflection. Take a moment to write down your roles and the values you want to embody in each. Draft a personal mission statement, not a long, ornate essay, but a clear expression of your guiding vision. Return to it regularly, refine it as you grow, and let it serve as your compass. Each day, before rushing into tasks, ask yourself, does this align with my mission? If yes, proceed with confidence. If no, reconsider, for no success can compensate for failure to remain true to yourself. This habit, more than any other, is the foundation upon which effectiveness is built. For without proactivity, the other habits collapse. How can you set goals? Habit 2. If you believe you're powerless to act, how can you prioritize? Habit 3. If your schedule is dictated by external pressures alone, how can you seek synergy? Habit 6. If you are forever reacting to others instead of choosing your part, everything begins with the recognition that you are the author of your life script. Let us close this chapter with a story that brings proactivity to life. Imagine two neighbors facing the same drought. One spends his days lamenting, cursing the skies, and watching his crops wither. The other wakes early, digs deeper wells, experiments with irrigation, and seeks advice from fellow farmers. When the rains finally return, the first neighbor has lost nearly everything, while the second, though tested, has preserved enough to thrive again. Both face the same drought, yet one lived reactively, the other proactively. Which neighbor do you wish to be? As we prepare to move into habit 2, begin with the end in mind. Carry this reflection. What story are you writing with your choices? Are you drifting with the winds? Or are you holding the pen, authoring a narrative guided by values and vision? Habit 1 invites you to take the pen firmly in hand. For only when we acknowledge our power to choose can we begin to design the destination toward which our lives are headed. And that is where our journey leads us next. A mission statement is not static. Just as a sailor adjusts sails while keeping the destination fixed, you too may adjust goals as life unfolds. The key is that the end remains steady, to live with integrity, to serve with purpose, to love deeply, to to grow continually. With this clarity, even setbacks become stepping stones, for they are interpreted in light of a larger vision. As we conclude this chapter, imagine again that funeral scene. Picture the words spoken about you, the legacy of kindness, strength, service, or love. Then realize, those words are not written in stone. They're being written today, with each decision, each habit, each choice. To begin with the end in mind is to live today as if you were shaping tomorrow's legacy, because you are. Now, with a compass in hand and a mission in heart, we turn to habit 3. Put first things first. If habit 2 is about vision, habit 3 is about discipline. It is the movement from imagining to implementing, from intention to action. For a mission without execution is a dream, but a mission lived daily becomes destiny. Chapter 3. Put first things first. Picture your life as a jar placed before you on a table. Next to the jar are rocks of different sizes, large stones, small pebbles, and grains of sand. Someone challenges you to fit them all inside. If you begin by pouring in the sand, the jar fills quickly and leaves little room for anything else. Add the pebbles next, and by the time you try to place the large stones, there is no space left. But if you start with the big stones, placing them carefully, one by one, then add the pebbles to fill the gaps, and finally pour in the sand to settle around them, suddenly everything fits. The lesson is simple yet profound. In life, if you do not put the big rocks in first, you may never fit them in at all. This is the essence of habit 3. Put first things first. If habit 1 teaches us that we are responsible for our choices, and habit 2 teaches us to define the vision and mission guiding those choices, habit 3 asks us to act. It is the habit of discipline, of organizing our days around the most important things rather than being driven by the urgent, but less meaningful. It is the bridge between vision and reality. Covey introduces a powerful framework to help us understand this, the time management matrix. Imagine a square divided into 4 quadrants. The vertical axis measures importance, things that truly matter, aligned with our mission and values. The horizontal axis measures urgency, things that demand immediate attention. Quadrant I contains tasks that are both urgent and important, crises, deadlines, emergencies. Quadrant 2 holds tasks that are important but not urgent. Relationship building, personal development, strategic planning, exercise, spiritual renewal. Quadrant 3 includes urgent but not important tasks, interruptions, endless meetings, minor requests. Quadrant 4, finally, is neither urgent nor important. Mindless scrolling, trivial distractions, wasted time. Most people, Covey explains, spend much of their lives reacting to quadrant I crises and being consumed by quadrant 3 urgencies. They rush from one deadline to another, constantly putting out fires, answering every ringing phone, replying to every notification, convinced they are productive because they are busy. Yet, like a hamster on a wheel, they exhaust themselves without moving closer to what truly matters. Quadrant 4, the realm of escape and indulgence, often swallows what little energy remains. The key to effectiveness, Covey insists, lies in Quadrant 2, the space of importance without urgency. It is here that we find prevention, preparation, relationship nurturing, goal setting, skill building. These are the activities that do not clamor for immediate attention, but yield the richest rewards over time. Neglect Quadrant 2, and you are doomed to live forever in the chaos of Quadrant I. Invest in Quadrant 2, and crises diminish because you have prepared in advance. Think of health as an example. Exercise, balanced diet, and regular checkups are Quadrant 2 activities. They are important, but rarely urgent. Skip them, and eventually you face Quadrant I emergencies, illness, injury, or burnout. Or consider relationships. Taking time to listen, to show appreciation, to spend quality moments. These are Quadrant 2. Ignore them, and eventually conflicts erupt, trust erodes, or connections fade, landing you in painful Quadrant I crises. Quadrant 2 requires foresight and discipline, but it is where lasting effectiveness is forged. To live habit 3, we must ask, what are the big rocks in my life? For some, it may be family, health, or spiritual growth. For others, professional excellence, or service to community. Whatever they are, they must be placed first in the jar of your schedule. If you do not intentionally schedule your priorities, someone else's urgencies will consume your time. As Covey warns, the key is not to prioritize your schedule, but to schedule your priorities. Imagine your week as a blank canvas. Rather than letting meetings, requests, and distractions paint it randomly, you take the brush and design it intentionally. You block time for exercise, for family dinners, for personal study, for quiet reflection, before filling in emails and errands. You commit to the activities that align with your mission, not merely the ones that shout the loudest. This requires courage, for the world constantly pressures us with the urgent. But leadership is the courage to say no to the less important, so you can say yes to what matters most. Covey illustrates with a practical story. A professor once stood before his students with a large jar and filled it with rocks. "Is it full?" he asked. The students nodded. He then poured in gravel, which filled the spaces between. "Full now." Again, they nodded. Next, he added sand, then water, until the jar brimmed. The lesson: you can always fit in more if you start with the big rocks. But reverse the order, and the rocks will never fit. The metaphor is unforgettable because it mirrors our daily lives. Without intentionality, sand and gravel, emails, errands, interruptions, fill our days, and the rocks, family, health, growth, are squeezed out. Habit 3 also challenges us to examine the courage we bring to decisions. It is not enough to identify what matters. We must act on it, even when it is inconvenient. Saying yes to your values often requires saying no to pressure, to invitations, to temptations. A parent who leaves work on time to attend a child's performance may disappoint a colleague, but honors a deeper commitment. A professional who invests in skill development instead of endless meetings may miss short-term appearances, but builds long-term value. Effectiveness requires the discipline to disappoint lesser things in order to remain true to greater ones. One of the most powerful ways Covey captures this habit is by distinguishing between leadership and management. Leadership is about vision, about making sure the ladder leans against the right wall. Management is about climbing the ladder efficiently. Habit 2 is leadership. Habit 3 is management. It is about executing on the vision with discipline. Without leadership, management may lead us quickly in the wrong direction. Without management, leadership remains a dream. Together, they form the rhythm of effectiveness. Envision, then act. Design, then build. Dream, then do. Let us reflect personally. Consider your current week. How much time have you invested in Quadrant 2 activities? Exercise, reflection, planning, nurturing relationships. How much has been consumed by Quadrant 3 distractions or Quadrant 4 escapes? Imagine if you redirected even a small portion of your time each week into Quadrant 2. Over months and years, the compound effect would be extraordinary. Healthier body, deeper relationships, greater competence, stronger character. Small daily disciplines accumulate into profound life transformation. Covey also reminds us that habit 3 is not about perfection. Life will always present urgent demands, and crises cannot be eliminated. But effectiveness lies in balance. If the majority of your energy flows to Quadrant 2, you will handle Quadrant I crises with steadiness, minimize Quadrant 3 interruptions, and avoid Quadrant 4 wastes. The goal is not rigidity, but intentionality. Let me share an analogy. Imagine a farmer. If he spends every day only reacting, fixing broken fences, rushing to save withering crops, chasing runaway animals, he is forever exhausted and barely surviving. But if he invests time in prevention, maintaining fences, rotating crops, planting irrigation, he reduces emergencies and enjoys sustainable harvests. Life is the same. Prevention and preparation are the soil of effectiveness. As this chapter closes, ask yourself, what are my big rocks? Write them down. Commit to scheduling them into your life first, before the gravel and sand arrive. Ask, what Quadrant 2 activities have I neglected? Which urgent but unimportant tasks drain my energy? Or must I say no, so that I can say yes to what truly matters? Habit 3 is the discipline of living your mission daily. It is the act of placing your rocks in the jar before the sand arrives. It is the courage to structure your time around principles, not pressures. When combined with habits 1 and 2, it transforms you from a passive reactor into a proactive, purposeful actor who not only dreams, but lives with intention. Now, having mastered independence through the first 3 habits, being proactive, clarifying vision, and prioritizing, we turn to the next stage of growth. Effectiveness does not stop at independence. It blossoms in interdependence. For even the strongest individuals cannot achieve their fullest potential alone. And so, we now cross the bridge in habit 4. Think win-win. Chapter 4. Think win-win. Imagine you are sitting at a negotiating table. On one side sits a business partner. On the other side sits you. The contract between you is nearly ready, but a final detail remains unresolved. The atmosphere grows tense as both sides push for their preferred outcome. Many people, in such moments, fall into a narrow mindset. Either I win or you win. If I get what I want, you must lose. If you gain, then I must give up something precious. This is the scarcity mindset, the belief that life is a pie of fixed size. If someone else takes a larger slice, there will be less for me. Stephen Covey, in Habit 4, offers us a different vision. Think win-win. It is the conviction that in relationships, negotiations, and human interactions, true effectiveness comes not from competition alone, nor from surrender, but from the pursuit of mutual benefit. Win-win is not a technique to manipulate others into agreement. It is a paradigm, a way of thinking rooted in abundance, respect, and cooperation. It is the belief that together we can create outcomes where both sides feel valued, both sides grow, and both sides walk away stronger. Covey describes 6 possible paradigms of human interaction. There is win-lose, the mindset of competition where one party triumphs at the expense of another. This may win battles, but often loses relationships, breeding resentment and mistrust. There is lose-win, the mindset of appeasement where one surrenders to avoid conflict, sacrificing personal values or needs, only to feel used and diminished. There is lose-lose, a destructive spiral where both sides, consumed by bitterness, drag each other down. There is win, the self-centered approach where one only cares about personal gain, indifferent to the impact on others. There is win-win, where mutual benefit is sought. And finally, there is win-win or no deal, where if mutual benefit cannot be found, parties agree amicably to part ways without harm. Of these, win-win is the most sustainable, especially in relationships that must endure. Consider a marriage. If one partner always wins and the other always loses, resentment builds until the bond erodes. If both lose, the relationship collapses entirely. True partnership requires win-win, where both feel respected, heard, and enriched. Or think of a workplace. If a manager thrives while employees feel exploited, productivity may rise temporarily, but morale declines, and talent eventually leaves. If employees slack off while expecting constant reward, the company falters. Win-win ensures both sides flourish, creating long-term trust and loyalty. To live win-win, Covey explains, requires 3 essential character traits: integrity, maturity, and an abundance mentality. Integrity means you anchor your actions and principles, staying true to values rather than manipulating or compromising dishonorably. Maturity means balancing courage and consideration, the courage to express your needs clearly, and the consideration to respect others' needs equally. An abundance mentality means rejecting the scarcity belief. It is the recognition that life is not a single pie, but a bakery where new pies can be baked, opportunities can be created, and cooperation can multiply results. Think of abundance as a farmer's mindset. A farmer does not hoard a few seeds, fearing scarcity. He plants generously, knowing that the soil, sun, and rain will yield more than he sowed. Scarcity hoards, abundance sows. Scarcity resents others' success. Abundance celebrates, knowing there is enough for all. To think win-win, we must cultivate abundance. But win-win is not soft or naive. It does not mean everyone gets everything they want, nor does it mean avoiding difficult conversations. Win-win requires courage to confront disagreements directly, honesty to state your needs, and creativity to seek solutions that honor both sides. It often demands more effort than win-lose or lose-win, for it requires listening, imagination, and negotiation. Yet, the rewards are profound: stronger trust, deeper relationships, and outcomes that endure. Covey illustrates with the paradigm of win-win or no deal. Sometimes, despite best efforts, no mutually beneficial solution exists. In such cases, instead of forcing a win-lose compromise that breeds future resentment, wise individuals choose no deal. They part ways respectfully, preserving the relationship for future collaboration. This mindset liberates us from desperation, for if we know we can walk away, we no longer manipulate or surrender dishonorably. We seek true cooperation, or none at all. Consider a story. Two children fight over an orange. A parent steps in and splits it in half, assuming fairness. Yet one child wanted only the juice, while the other needed the peel for baking. By cutting the orange without understanding, both ended with less than they needed. Win-win would have discovered their true interests and created a solution where each got exactly what they sought. The lesson is clear. Win-win requires not just compromise, but deep understanding of needs, then crafting creative solutions. Reflect on your own life. How often do you approach situations with scarcity, believing someone else's gain is your loss? How often do you seek to dominate or avoid, rather than to cooperate? How would your relationships change if you carried an abundance mentality? If you approach conflicts not with suspicion, but with curiosity, asking, what solution could honor us both? Living win-win also means redefining success. In a win-lose world, success is measured by comparison. Am I ahead of others? Have I defeated competition? In win-win, success is measured by contribution. Have we created value together? Have we strengthened each other? Have we left the table with trust intact? This shift is transformative, for it moves us from rivalry to synergy, from fear to confidence. Let's use a simple analogy. Picture two climbers scaling a mountain. In win-lose, one reaches the summit while the other is left behind. In lose-win, one sits still while the other climbs alone. In lose-lose, they quarrel until both fall. But in win-win, they climb together, tethered by trust, pulling each other upward. The summit is shared, but so is the journey, and the bond formed along the way is as valuable as the view from the top. To embrace habit 4 in daily life, practice begins in language and mindset. When facing negotiation, ask not just what do I want, but what do we both need? When disagreements arise, frame them not as battles, but as puzzles to solve together. When others succeed, resist envy and instead celebrate, affirming that their success does not diminish yours. Train your heart in abundance, your mind in creativity, and your voice in integrity. As we close this chapter, let us pause for reflection. Picture your most important relationships: family, friends, colleagues. Ask yourself, am I living with a win-win mindset? Do I listen deeply and honor their needs? Do I express my own courageously? Do I approach each interaction with abundance and creativity? If not, what shift can I make today? Habit 4 is the first step into interdependence. It is the foundation of public victory, for without win-win, cooperation crumbles. With it, trust flourishes, synergy becomes possible, and relationships strengthen. Having chosen win-win as our paradigm, we are now ready to learn the skills that make it real. And so, we turn to habit 5. Seek first to understand, then to be understood. For only by listening deeply can we truly build the bridges that win-win requires. Chapter 5. Seek first to understand, then to be understood. Imagine sitting across from a friend who is clearly troubled. Their shoulders are slumped, their words hesitant, their eyes restless with unspoken worries. You lean forward and, eager to help, begin offering advice before they have even finished their first sentence. You prescribe solutions, share your own experiences, even quote motivational lines. Yet, instead of feeling relieved, your friend withdraws further, nodding politely while a silent wall grows between you. Why? Because in your rush to be understood, you never truly understood them first. Stephen Covey, in Habit 5, invites us to embrace a radical but timeless truth. Before we seek to have our own voice heard, before we persuade or advise, we must first understand others deeply. Seek first to understand, then to be understood is more than a communication technique. It is a principle of empathy, a discipline of listening with the heart. It is the recognition that most people do not listen with the intent to understand. They listen with the intent to reply. They filter words through their own frame, readying responses rather than opening themselves to comprehension. Covey draws a parallel to the medical profession. Imagine visiting a doctor who prescribes strong medication after barely glancing at you, without asking questions, without listening to symptoms. You would likely lose trust instantly. Yet, in daily life, we often commit the same error. We diagnose without understanding, prescribe without listening. We assume we already know, and in doing so, we sever the bridge of genuine connection. To truly understand, Covey emphasizes, we must practice empathetic listening. This is not the passive act of hearing words, nor the active act of probing with questions, but the deeper discipline of entering another's frame of reference, seeing the world through their eyes, feeling what they feel, and suspending our own judgments long enough to inhabit their experience. Empathetic listening says, your story matters. Your perspective is valid. I will walk beside you in it before I offer my own. This habit transforms relationships. Consider a teenager arguing with a parent. The parent, hearing complaints about rules, may instinctively defend authority, explaining the reasons for boundaries. Yet if the parent pauses, listens empathetically, and reflects the teenager's feelings, frustration, desire for independence, need for trust, the atmosphere shifts. The teenager feels heard, no longer battling for recognition, and only then becomes open to hearing the parent's perspective. The order is crucial. Understanding first, expression later. Covey identifies the common traps we fall into when listening. We often evaluate, judging statements as right or wrong before fully hearing them. We probe, asking questions that steer the conversation toward our own agenda. We advise, offering solutions without full understanding. We interpret, projecting our own motives onto others' words. These habits, though natural, distort communication. They center us rather than the other, and they block the flow of empathy. Empathetic listening, by contrast, requires patience and humility. It is the practice of silence when silence is needed, of reflection when clarification is sought. It involves restating not only words but feelings, mirroring back emotions to show true presence. When someone says, "I'm exhausted," empathetic listening does not reply, "Yes, I know how you feel. I was exhausted yesterday too." Instead, it gently reflects, "You're carrying so much, it sounds overwhelming." This reflection creates space for deeper sharing. Yet habit 5 is not only about listening, it is also about the second movement, then to be understood. After understanding others, we earn the right to express ourselves clearly, authentically, and respectfully. Covey stresses that communication is a two-way street. If we only listen and never share, relationships become unbalanced. But when we listen first, our words later carry greater weight, for they are grounded in trust and empathy. Think of it as building an emotional bank account, a metaphor Covey uses to describe the trust within relationships. Every act of understanding is a deposit. Every act of dismissal is a withdrawal. By listening first, we deposit trust, so that when we speak, the account is full, and our words are received with openness rather than defensiveness. A powerful example comes from the business world. Imagine a manager leading a team through change. If the manager announces decisions abruptly, employees may resist, feeling unheard. But if the manager first listens, holding space for fears, questions, and frustrations, then communicates the vision with clarity, employees are far more likely to align because they feel included and valued. Understanding first paves the way for being understood. Covey also underscores that effective expression, being understood, requires courage with consideration. Courage means voicing your own perspective honestly, even when difficult. Consideration means expressing it with respect, mindful of the other's feelings and needs. Without courage, we fall into silence and resentment. Without consideration, we speak harshly, wounding relationships. Together, courage and consideration create communication that is both truthful and compassionate. Let us draw an analogy. Imagine a bridge spanning a river. Understanding is the foundation on one side, expression the foundation on the other. The bridge can only stand if both are strong. If we listen but never speak, the bridge ends halfway. If we speak but never listen, the bridge collapses into the water. Only by listening first, then expressing with courage and consideration, can the bridge hold, allowing true connection to flow across. Reflection is essential here. Consider how often, in your own conversations, you prepare replies before the other has finished speaking. How often do you offer advice before understanding? How often do you interpret someone's story through your own lens rather than theirs? Imagine how your relationships would change if you paused, listened deeply, reflected emotions, and then, only after true understanding, expressed your perspective with clarity. Habit 5 also reshapes conflict resolution. Most conflicts escalate because neither side feels heard. Each defends their stance, raising their voice, layering argument upon argument. The cycle spirals until trust shatters. But when one side chooses to listen first, the dynamic transforms. By acknowledging the other's viewpoint, by saying, "I hear you, I understand why you feel that way," the temperature lowers. The other feels respected, and space opens for dialogue. It does not mean agreeing with everything. It means honoring humanity before debating ideas. In marriages, empathetic listening can heal wounds. In friendships, it can deepen bonds. In leadership, it can inspire loyalty. In communities, it can bridge divides. In all cases, it begins with humility, the willingness to step outside ourselves and enter the world of another. Covey reminds us that Habit 5 is the key to Habit 4 and Habit 6. To think win-win requires knowing what both sides truly value, and that knowledge comes only from listening first. To synergize requires blending differences into new solutions, and that blending begins with understanding differences fully. Without Habit 5, win-win becomes shallow and synergy impossible. With it, collaboration flourishes. As this chapter closes, pause and imagine your next important conversation. What if you set aside the urge to respond quickly? What if you listen not just with your ears, but with your eyes and your heart, noticing tone, posture, emotion? What if you reflected back what you heard, allowing the other to feel deeply seen? And then, what if you express yourself with courage and respect, grounded in empathy? How might that conversation change? Habit 5 is a practice of presence, humility, and courage. It is the art of listening so well that others feel safe to open their hearts, and the art of speaking so authentically that your voice resonates. It builds bridges where walls once stood, and it prepares us for the next step in our journey. Habit 6. Synergize, the celebration of differences that creates outcomes greater than any individual could imagine. Chapter 6. Synergize. Picture a forest where many trees stand together, their roots intertwined beneath the soil, their branches overlapping above, creating a canopy of shade and life. A single tree may fall in a storm, but the forest endures because the trees share strength through their connection. This is the essence of synergy. The whole is greater than the sum of its parts. Stephen Covey, in Habit 6, calls us to embrace synergy as a way of thinking, living, and collaborating, a mindset that turns differences into assets and diversity into innovation. Synergy, at its heart, is the celebration of differences. Most people fear or tolerate differences. They see them as obstacles to agreement or threats to their own perspective. But synergy invites us to see differences as sparks of creativity, opportunities for growth, and pathways to new possibilities. It asks us to move beyond compromise, where both sides give up something, to cooperation, where both sides gain something neither could have achieved alone. Covey often says that synergy is not about blending sameness, but harmonizing diversity. Imagine an orchestra. If every instrument played the same note, the music would be flat and lifeless. But when violins, cellos, flutes, and drums each contribute their unique sound, guided by shared purpose, the result is a symphony. In the same way, Synergy values uniqueness, not uniformity, and turns it into collective beauty. To create synergy, we must practice the habits we have already learned. Habit 4, think win-win, provides a mindset of mutual benefit. Habit 5, seek first understand, then to be understood, provides the skill of empathetic listening. Together, they make synergy possible. Without win-win, collaboration collapses into competition. Without empathetic listening, differences become arguments. But with both, differences become fertile ground for creativity. Consider a workplace example. A team is tasked with developing a new product. One member, detail-oriented, worries about costs and logistics. Another, visionary, dreams big and proposes bold ideas. A third, empathetic, focuses on customer needs. Alone, each perspective is limited. Together, through open dialogue, they create a product that is innovative, practical, and human-centered, far better than what any one of them could design alone. This is synergy in action, but synergy is not easy. It requires humility to admit that others may hold pieces of truth we lack. It requires patience to sit with tension, to resist rushing toward premature compromise. It requires courage to share our own perspective honestly, even when it differs. And it requires trust, the belief that others are not enemies to defeat, but partners to create with. Without trust, differences divide. With trust, differences combine. Think of a marriage. Two individuals bring different backgrounds, temperaments, and dreams. If they demand uniformity, insisting the other think and act the same, the relationship stagnates. But if they respect differences, listen empathetically, and seek win-win solutions, their differences become strengths. One may provide stability, the other spontaneity. One may bring practicality, the other imagination. Together, they create a life richer than either could alone. Covey illustrates synergy with a simple math analogy. 1 plus 1 can equal 3, or 10, or even more, depending on how differences interact. This is not literal mathematics, but a metaphor for creative cooperation. When minds and hearts combine, they generate ideas, solutions, and outcomes that surpass the sum of individual contributions. Yet we must acknowledge that synergy is fragile. It cannot be forced. If one party dominates, if mistrust poisons dialogue, if differences are ridiculed rather than respected, synergy withers. It grows only in the soil of openness, safety, and respect. That is why the earlier habits, especially habit 5, are essential. Empathetic listening provides the fertile ground where synergy can take root. Let us reflect through a story. Two people look at a young tree. One says, "It is crooked, weak, and likely to break." The other says, "It is flexible, resilient, able to bend without snapping." Both are correct, but from different angles. If they argue over who is right, they miss the fuller picture. If they listen and combine perspectives, they see the truth. The tree's flexibility is both its weakness and its strength, depending on the context. From this shared understanding, new wisdom emerges. Synergy also applies to cultural differences. In a global world, people from varied traditions, languages, and values must interact. If we fear differences, we isolate. If we exploit differences, we dominate. But if we synergize, we learn from one another, creating societies richer in wisdom and resilience. Diversity becomes not a threat, but a treasure. To practice synergy in everyday life, we must shift from defensive listening to creative collaboration. When someone disagrees, instead of resisting, we can ask, what insight do they see that I do not? What possibility lies hidden in our difference? When conflict arises, instead of rushing to compromise, we can explore deeper. Is there a third alternative we have not yet imagined? This openness turns disagreement into discovery. Covey introduces the concept of the third alternative. In many disputes, people assume only two options exist, mine or yours. Compromise splits the difference, leaving both partly unsatisfied. But synergy asks, is there a third way, a new option that satisfies both more fully? This third alternative emerges not from stubborn defense, but from creative cooperation. It is born in the space where empathy and courage meet. Reflect on your own relationships. How often do you settle for compromise, splitting time, resources, or decisions just to end conflict? What if, instead, you paused, listened deeply, and asked, is there a solution better than either of our initial positions? Imagine how such a practice could transform family decisions, workplace projects, or community debates. Synergy also calls us to embrace vulnerability. When we admit we do not have all the answers, when we open ourselves to others' perspectives, we risk being challenged, even changed. But in that vulnerability lies strength, for only when we are open can we learn, and only when we learn can we grow together. An analogy may help. Picture a mosaic made of broken pieces of glass. Each shard alone is sharp and incomplete, but when arranged together, they form a picture of dazzling beauty, light reflecting in unexpected patterns. Our differences are like those shards. Alone, they are limited. Together, they become art. This is the promise of synergy. As we close this chapter, pause to reflect. Think of a recent disagreement you faced. Did you seek only to win or to compromise? Or did you open the door to synergy? Did you see the other's difference as a threat or as a potential gift? What third alternative might you have discovered if you had listened longer, trusted more, and created together? Habit 6 is the culmination of interdependence. It is the fruit of win-win and empathetic listening, the flowering of respect and trust. It transforms relationships, families, teams, and societies. And it prepares us for the final habit, Habit 7, where we turn inward once more to renew ourselves, ensuring we have the energy, wisdom, and balance to sustain effectiveness over a lifetime. Synergy is not merely cooperation, it is creation. It is the music of diversity harmonized, the forest of interwoven roots, the mosaic of broken pieces turned to art. It is life lived not alone but together, not in fear of difference, but in celebration of it. And in learning to synergize, we unlock possibilities far greater than we ever imagined. Chapter 7, Sharpen the Saw. Imagine a woodcutter in the forest. Day after day, he swings his saw at mighty trees. At first, the saw cuts swiftly, its teeth sharp, its rhythm strong. But as time passes, the blade grows dull. Each stroke requires more effort. Yet the woodcutter, pressed by urgency, refuses to pause. I cannot stop, he says. I must keep cutting. And so he works harder, sweats more, but fells fewer trees. A passerby asks gently, why not take time to sharpen your saw? The woodcutter sighs, I am too busy cutting. This parable captures the essence of Habit 7. Sharpen the saw. Stephen Covey closes his book with this final habit because it sustains all the others. Without renewal, even the most disciplined habits decay. Without replenishment, even the strongest character weakens. Sharpening the saw means preserving and enhancing the greatest asset you possess, yourself. It is the habit of self-care, self-renewal, and continuous growth. Covey describes 4 dimensions of renewal: physical, mental, spiritual, and social/emotional. Each is vital, for we are whole beings, not fragments. To neglect one dimension is to dull the saw. To nurture all 4 is to sustain effectiveness across a lifetime. The physical dimension. Our bodies are the instruments through which we live, work, and love. Physical renewal means caring for health through exercise, nutrition, rest, and stress management. It does not demand extreme regimes, but consistent stewardship. Exercise strengthens endurance and resilience. Good nutrition fuels energy. Rest restores balance. Without physical renewal, we may achieve short bursts of productivity, but soon burn out. With it, we gain the stamina to pursue long-term effectiveness. Think of an athlete. To perform at peak level, they train, eat wisely, and rest strategically. They do not wait until injury strikes to pay attention. They invest daily. In the same way, sharpening the physical saw is not an emergency measure, but a lifestyle. It honors the principle that effectiveness begins with energy. The mental dimension. Our minds shape our perceptions, decisions, and creativity. Mental renewal means lifelong learning, reading widely, writing reflectively, engaging in meaningful conversations, and challenging ourselves with new skills. It is the recognition that the mind, like a muscle, grows stronger through exercise. Covey reminds us that formal education may end, but self-education must never cease. To stop learning is to stagnate. To keep learning is to remain alive. Reading great literature, exploring diverse disciplines, practicing problem solving, and cultivating curiosity sharpen our intellectual saw. Even journaling, writing down thoughts, insights, and reflections, deepens clarity. Mental renewal transforms life from routine into discovery. The spiritual dimension. At the core of our being lies the spiritual dimension, the source of meaning, purpose, and alignment with principles. Spiritual renewal does not belong to one religion alone. It is the universal quest to connect with the deeper values that guide us. For some, it comes through prayer, meditation, or scripture. For others, through nature, music, art, or solitude. Spiritual renewal is about stepping away from noise and recentering on what matters most. It is the practice of asking, what are my deepest values? Am I living true to them? What legacy do I wish to leave? Without spiritual renewal, life becomes reactive, driven by external pressures. With it, life becomes proactive, anchored in inner clarity. Think of a compass. A person may run swiftly with great stamina and intelligence, but if they run in the wrong direction, they will never reach their destination. Spiritual renewal is the act of checking the compass, ensuring our actions align with our principles. It sharpens the inner saw that directs all others. The social/emotional dimension. Finally, we are relational beings. Our emotional health and social connections profoundly affect our effectiveness. Renewal in this dimension comes through building meaningful relationships, practicing empathy, cultivating trust, and giving service. It is about strengthening the emotional bank accounts we share with others, ensuring deposits of kindness, honesty, and understanding outweigh withdrawals of neglect or criticism. Serving others is a powerful form of social renewal. When we lift another, we ourselves are lifted. When we contribute to family, friends, community, or causes larger than ourselves, we replenish our emotional energy. This dimension reminds us that effectiveness is not only about achievement, but also about connection. The balance of renewal. Covey stresses that these four dimensions are interdependent. Neglect one, and the others suffer. Care for all, and they reinforce each other. Physical health gives energy to learning. Learning enriches spirit. Spirit guides relationships. Relationships support well-being. Renewal is not compartmentalized, but holistic. Sharpening the saw also requires balance between production and production capability. What Covey calls the P/PC balance. Production is the output, the trees cut, the tasks accomplished, the goals achieved. Production capability is the ability to keep producing, the sharpness of the saw, the health of the worker, the strength of the relationships. Focusing only on production burns out capability. Focusing only on capability neglects results. Balance sustains both. Consider a business that pushes employees to work relentlessly without rest. Short-term productivity may rise, but long-term capability declines as burnout spreads. Conversely, a company that only invests in training and wellness without clear goals may drift without results. Sharpening the saw means balancing both sides, sustaining capability while producing outcomes. Stories of renewal. Covey shares many stories of people who neglected renewal until crisis forced them to stop. The executive who ignored health until a heart attack struck. The parent who pursued career success while family bonds quietly eroded. The student who chased grades but lost love of learning. Each discovered too late that a dull saw cannot cut. Renewal is not a luxury, but a necessity. Yet there are also stories of renewal done well. Leaders who carve time for reflection, ensuring their decisions flow from values. Families who invest in shared rituals, meals together, conversations, vacations that replenish bonds. Individuals who commit to daily exercise, reading, or meditation, sharpening their saw regularly so that life remains vibrant. Reflection and challenge. Pause for a moment and reflect. Which dimension of your saw is sharp and which is dull? Do you care for your body with energy-giving habits? Do you nourish your mind with learning? Do you connect with your spirit, aligning actions with principles? Do you cultivate relationships that uplift? Where might renewal be most needed in your life? Sharpening the saw is an act of stewardship. You are the instrument through which all other habits operate. If you neglect yourself, your ability to live proactively, to think win-win, to synergize, diminishes. If you renew yourself, every other habit strengthens. As Covey concludes, effectiveness is not a one-time achievement, but a lifelong journey. Habits 1 through 6 build a foundation of private and public victory. Habit 7 ensures the foundation endures. Renewal turns the circle of habits into a spiral of growth, each cycle taking us higher, each sharpening preparing us for greater challenges. Closing thought. So, as you walk away from this book, imagine holding a saw in your hands. Each day, you face the choice. Will you keep cutting with a dull blade, straining with frustration, or will you pause to sharpen it, investing in your health, mind, spirit, and relationships? The choice may seem small in the moment, but over a lifetime, it makes all the difference. Sharpen the saw, and you will not only achieve success, you will sustain it, renew it, and live with the energy, clarity, and joy that effectiveness was always meant to bring. Epilogue: the journey of effectiveness. As we reach the final moments of this journey, let us pause and look back at the path we have walked together. We began with a call to shift from a personality ethic, quick fixes and shallow techniques, to a character ethic, rooted in principles that endure through time. Stephen Covey invited us to build our lives not upon sand, but upon rock, aligning with truths as steady as gravity. From that foundation, he guided us through 7 habits, each a step higher, each a discipline deeper, each a choice that shapes destiny. The first 3 habits spoke of private victory. They taught us that real change begins within, not with circumstances or other people, but with the person in the mirror. Habit 1 urged us to be proactive, to claim the power of response, to refuse victimhood, and to act from values rather than moods. Habit 2 asked us to begin with the end in mind, to envision life not as a series of accidents, but as a deliberate creation, guided by purpose and principles. Habit 3 challenged us to put first things first, to rise above distraction and urgency, focusing on what truly matters, structuring days so that actions serve values, not impulses. Together, these habits form the groundwork of independence, the ability to stand strong, to direct life from the inside out. Then came the next 3 habits, leading us to public victory. Habit 4 taught us to think win-win, to reject the narrow lens of competition and embrace the abundance of cooperation, building relationships where mutual benefit creates lasting trust. Habit 5 reminded us to seek first to understand, then to be understood, revealing that empathy is the bridge that connects hearts and minds, and that listening with sincerity is the most persuasive act of all. Habit 6 crowned the sequence with synergy, showing that the whole can be greater than the sum of its parts, that diversity is not a threat but a treasure, and that when differences are honored and combined, creativity blossoms into solutions no one could find alone. These habits moved us from independence to interdependence, teaching us that true greatness is not solitary, but relational. Finally, Habit 7 brought us to sharpen the saw, reminding us that effectiveness is not a sprint but a lifetime. Renewal, physical, mental, spiritual, social, ensures the blade stays sharp, the energy flows strong, and the journey continues upward. Without renewal, even the wisest habits dull. With it, they flourish across decades. As the circle closes, the spiral opens. For these habits are not steps to be checked once and forgotten. They are rhythms of life, cycles of growth, patterns to revisit again and again. Each time we return to proactivity, we claim freedom anew. Each time we begin with the end in mind, we clarify purpose afresh. Each time we seek first to understand, we deepen relationships. And each time we sharpen the saw, we prepare for challenges yet unseen. Think of your life now. Perhaps, as you listened, a memory stirred, a moment when you reacted instead of responded, when urgency crowded out what mattered, when conflict eroded trust, when fatigue dulled your joy. Do not regret. Instead, see these moments as invitations. Every day, life hands us fresh wood to cut, new choices to make. Every day, we may dull the blade or sharpen it. Every day, we may drift with currents or steer with principles. Covey's message is both timeless and urgent. The gap between what we do and what we are capable of doing is not bridged by luck, nor by tricks, but by habits. Habits are the silent architecture of destiny. And by choosing the right ones, we craft lives of effectiveness, lives of contribution, lives of meaning. Picture a stone dropped into still water. Rings ripple outward, touching distant shores. So it is with these habits. When one person becomes proactive, begins with purpose, lives with discipline, others feel the impact. Families strengthen, teams collaborate, communities heal, nations shift. The habits we nurture in private echo in public, shaping a legacy far beyond our sight. So let me leave you with this reflection. What will your end in mind be? What story will your life tell? When the years have passed and your saw is laid down, what trees will stand tall because you chose to sharpen it? Effectiveness is not perfection. It is progress, grounded in principles. It is not a destination, but a journey, walked one habit at a time, one choice at a time, one day at a time. As you step away from these words, remember the woodcutter and his saw. Remember the compass that points north. Remember the circle of influence that grows when you act with courage. And above all, remember that you hold within you the power to choose. For between stimulus and response lies a space. In that space lies your freedom. And in that freedom lies your growth and your happiness. Sharpen your saw. Live your principles. Seek synergy. Listen with empathy. Aim for win-win. Put first things first. Begin with the end in mind. Be proactive. And as you do, may your life not only be effective, but significant, rich with contribution, filled with purpose, and remembered with love.